Welcome, everybody, to our February webinar in our monthly series at Alpine. We are continuing with our sports theme, and I hope everyone is enjoying the Winter Olympics. And I also hope that you will enjoy today's presentation, Navigating the Gates, Warehouse Optimization. And before we jump in, there is a poll that we are taking. So if you could take time to fill that poll out at the end of the presentation, we will be going over the results. And also, if you have any questions, there is the QA and chat option that you can submit your questions, and then we will look to respond to those live during the presentation. So my name is Jim Chamberlain. I'm going to be your moderator today. I am Senior Managing Director at Alpine. I head up our warehousing practice. And there are a lot of things that go into deciding the facility of choice, whether you're moving from an existing facility into a spec building, or if you're looking to have a build to suit. There's the location, the size, truck flow, how many dock doors are required, what's the clear height of the building, the office space and the office aesthetics. You know, when you've gone through a lot of these items, you feel like I've got all the bases covered, but have you? What about column spacing? So today we are actually going to dive into the aspect of a facility that tends to get overlooked, but can have long-lasting impacts either in a positive way or in a negative way, depending on how they're laid out. And that actually needs to be a deciding factor in the design of a new facility or in selecting a existing facility. So we will talk about ideal column spacing as it relates to different storage types, as well as your business profile. We'll look at how you can predict and prevent certain negative occurrences associated with columns, and even talk about revenue loss that can be a direct result of your building column spacing. So today our presenter is Austin Miller. Austin Miller is our engineering design and CAD expert, and he has seen quite a few layouts and has learned a thing or two about how columns impact the design and the functionality within the four walls. So Austin, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jim. So column spacings. So you can see these couple examples here show the big don'ts for column spacing. On the left, you can see the column stuck out in the aisle. So we're losing all the positions behind it. And with it being on the aisle like that, it just always has that tendency to attract forklifts to it. So you just end up with a lot of safety issues as well as capacity loss issues that you just don't want to deal with. And then on the right, we managed to get the column out of the aisle, but we're losing all of our space inside of our racking there. And we just end up with this huge capacity loss at the end based off of where that racking falls with the columns. So we're going to be looking at the first column off of your dock doors. And this one has a large impact on your entire facility. With it being, so with it being a less than ideal, we're looking at a column that is 40 to 50 feet off of your doors. That's going to dictate your staging layout and the options you have there. And it's also going to further impact where your racking can start and making sure we're giving enough space for walkways and aisle widths. It's going to end up limiting a lot of your future upgrade placements. So we're looking at automation, whether it be conveyors or anything, and then even extra staging options if your warehouse grows into needing larger staging options. If you're getting really like bottlenecked up at your shipping and receiving, and you need to increase that area, when you have columns inside of your staging or just outside of them, you lose all that room that you could potentially have to upgrade or shift around some of your racking. So you're pretty stuck there with that 40 to 50 foot column off of your door. In an ideal world, we're going to be looking at that first column off of your docks closer to that 70, 75 feet. And that's going to give you plenty of room for different staging and storage options. And it's going to leave you extremely flexible and suit all the needs for any future endeavors or upgrades that you will look at in your facilities. Okay, so here I have a less than ideal look at a warehouse. So we can see there's multiple columns in our staging area, and that's actually causing us to lose positions here. Now, in just this picture, we can see 6 columns here in the staging. And if we figure it's 10 deep and there's 6 columns, that's 60 positions that we could be getting by having columns at that 70 to 75 feet off. That's also going to leave us with less options for fork trucks moving around and less and be more susceptible to getting hit there in one of the busier areas and more congested areas in our facilities. Okay, so here's 2 examples of some ideals where we have that nice distance off of our dock doors for columns. And we can just see that there's way more room to maneuver around, whether it be extra staging lanes or if we wanted to add conveyors. And then there is less chances of columns getting hit or being completely in the way. Now, the cost to further these beams into our warehouse may seem high, but in reality, it offsets by there being less columns. So I really like to see this in a lot of facilities, and it makes for a lot more ideal and optimal designs in these facilities. Okay, so optimal column spacing based on our storage types. So we can have column spacings that fit our design very well. We can also have column spacing that can decide what storage type that we're going to put into our warehouse to get around the spacing between them. And then there's different ways to decide optimal storage options based on your layout and what column spacing you have. So here we talk about columns inside of floor storage. So we just have striping around columns. You can see from my left example where I've seen in quite a few warehouses where we just stripe off either side of the column, leaving us with wasted space. It's not quite enough for one pallet position even, or one footprint. And then on the right, which is the way that I like to design warehouses and striping for floor positions, where I will just keep the same pattern throughout my distance of floor where I want this striping. And I'll just pretend like the columns aren't there. And then when I go to decide how much storage I'm getting, I'll just say that the last position in these bays or last half position in these bays, we won't place anything there. So we're only losing 1, maybe 2 positions or footprints in these lanes. So I did just some quick math. We did 100,000 square foot warehouse. By having the striping around the column, I'm losing 156 footprints or a 2% loss in capacity just by striping around them, whether it be for ease of access, where if I have the pattern stay the same, that's an extra positions I have, and I don't have any wasted space in my staging lanes here. So some deciding factors on column placement. We'll be looking at like desired aisle width and how it'll adjust the spacing that we would want between our columns. So this is an example. If we want 10-foot aisles with a back-to-back single select, our column is going to be ideal at 54 feet. And this means that we have a 12-inch flue space, as we have on the example on the left side there, a 12-inch flue space with the column falling into that flue space every other aisle. So, for example, if we were to expand those columns to 60 feet, we're going to result in wider aisles or columns buried inside of storage positions, right? Not in the flue space where we're not going to lose any positions. And this results in a 10% increase of space for the exact same amount of capacity, right? So that's a 10% loss on total capacity just by moving those columns to an unoptimal or less than ideal width between each other. And that's why columns have a massive impact for any sort of racking in a warehouse. So here I'm going to go over some examples of column spacing and then different types of racks in the way they work around those columns. So for back-to-back single select, like I was just talking about in the previous slide, we want between 54 and 56 feet of column spacing. And that's going to give us right around our 10-foot aisle, which is most common in most of the warehouses. And it gives us plenty of room in our aisle for safe procedures. And then we can see when we go to a single select with a 3D pushback backing it, our ideal column spacing is between 58 and 53 feet. And then we add 4 feet for every extra depth of pushback. So whether it be 4 deep or 5 deep. And that's going to be where we want these columns to fall to fit this single select with pushback. And by designing based on these storage type results, it will give us the best use of space and then deliver a high facility revenue generation because we have no capacity loss with these columns falling in less than ideal positions, whether it be aisles or inside of racking. So this is a tool that I designed here at Alpine where we can actually figure aisle width based off of different specs inside of our warehouse that we're looking for, right? So we have our column spacing, our column width, and then how many aisles we want, and then all of our different types of storage that we're going to be looking at. And I use this tool quite often when dealing with either new build to suit facilities and or existing facilities, where when I get some SKU data results and some storage type analysis results, I can actually sit down and go through this based on the number of racks and the types of racks that I'm going to be looking at for a facility and decide how this is all going to fit in there, even before breaking down and putting it onto a CAD or onto a layout. I'm able to get a good idea of how this racking is going to fit into a warehouse only based off of columns and storage types.
And Austin, this is really interesting to me because as a fellow engineer, it seems like a lot of times we get involved once the concrete and the walls are going up and it's already been decided. But involving the engineering process up front can actually lead to much better results and better utilization within the facility. And I don't think a lot of people think about that in terms of, you know, what should the column spacing be? A lot of times people just think in terms of round numbers and end up with, all right, let's go with 50-foot columns and we go from there. So this is really interesting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great tool that I've been able to use and utilize in many facilities that I've designed and helped design. So what can we do with existing and or new facilities? So at Alpine, we conduct a storage type analysis, which will help us identify ideal size and quantity of the forward, pick, and reserve locations. So what we're going to do is we're going to match your SKU data to racking types and then base it off of SKU and volume growth that we factor into the analysis to let us get a really, really good idea of how to maximize your capacity based on of all of your individual data. And then we're going to be able to turn that data into a reality when we put this into a layout and start designing it, where we start leveraging optimal data to the design that layout that can maximize our capacity, and then making it fit into your warehouse and your layout and how your columns affect it and where your walls are, how big your rooms are. And we're really able to get down into the data and pull out a lot of really good information and get these layouts working perfectly based on the facts of your columns are at this. And we're able to get really optimal and really good layout designs here.
Yeah, and Austin, this is just another example of doing the proactive analysis up front can really pay dividends down the road.
And this is also what you're looking at there is also based on, you know, somebody that already has an existing facility. How can I help improve what they're doing or mitigate if they do have less than optimal spacing of their facility and things like that as well, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go over a rack type profile and some results that I got from designing a facility. So we can see here on the left in this image, I had the placement and pairing of rack types, and I was able to minimize capacity loss based on existing columns that they already had in their warehouse. So you can see in this picture, based on our storage type analysis, it called for their warehouse to have a denser 4 deep pushback, as well as single select with 3 deep pushback for their less dense storage where they just needed more pick facings. So when I was given, when put onto this layout design, I was kind of at a loss with these columns. There was no easy way of going about it, right? That I could just see off the bat. So I just started going into it, and I would break down the STA and see what kind of rackings I need. And I was actually able to place them in a way where I could put that column in the last slot on these pushbacks. And then I'm able to keep everything in front of it, not lose any pick facings, and only lose an eighth or a quarter of what I would lose if that column happened to be in the front of these pushbacks. I'm able to keep all of that storage still, keep all those pick facings that we desperately needed in this warehouse. So I was able to mitigate a lot of that damage of these a less than ideal column spacing, and I was still able to come out where we were able to meet our customers' capacity projections, even though these columns were very much less than ideal. So that was just one example of a warehouse that I've worked on, and this is very common in a lot of the warehouses that I have seen, where these columns will end up falling either into an aisle, or I'll have to bury them. And being able to leverage that storage type analysis and the different rack profiles that we're able to use for their storage, and put those columns in the best place to still gain way more capacity than they had before.
So basically, Austin, it sounds like when you're given lemons, you have to make lemonade out of it, and the creative process that goes into the layout design can actually have a lot of benefits if you put the time and effort into looking at the different possibilities and combinations of how you can actually apply your layout.
Absolutely. Okay, so now we're going to go over some capacity-based revenue loss. And here we're going to look at revenue loss based on a decrease in capacity given 12 inventory turns in a year. And with some assumptions that there's a 100,000 square foot facility with 10 square foot per pallet, we're given 50 cases per pallet at $20 a case. Now, when we start looking at this, if we have columns in just 2% of our racking, so that's taking up those positions, that's going to be a $2.4 million loss in revenue generating space. And then we even increase that to 5% of columns inside of our racking, and we up that right to 6 million loss in revenue generating space. Now, instead of maximizing revenue potential by utilizing either outside storage or operating with less than ideal safety stock levels, like I've seen with quite a few of the facilities in the past, we can actually take the existing warehouse and use that storage type analysis and leverage it with some design work. And we're able to come out with a more optimal storage solution and gain back some of that loss in revenue that we had before. So we don't have to think about having more touches and getting an outside storage option. And we never want to work with less than ideal safety stock levels. So by using that storage type and thinking about columns a little deeper and working around them, we're actually able to gain back a lot of that loss in revenue throughout an entire warehouse. So there's some different ways to prevent and prepare yourself for working around columns and how to make them less impactful in your warehouse. So like I've been talking about this entire time is performing a storage type analysis before settling on either an existing facility or a build to suit. We're able to ensure the selection of the ideal facility. So using those rack profiles and all the data that we accumulated and put into this storage type analysis, we're able to figure out what sort of layout would be most optimal for you. And then you can go find a facility that fits into that layout, right? And then even then, if we have that facility and maybe it's not absolutely perfect, we still have that STA to fall back on to continue designing and moving those columns to be the least impactful, so we're not losing any revenue there. And then if we're planning a build to suit, an STA gives you the most optimal layout, and then it can just navigate you into a perfect solution by working with the engineers building out the facility. And we're able to place those columns exactly where your storage option wants them to be, instead of having to work your storage option around the columns. And that's some of the ways that STA really helps design and build in a lot of these factors that are going to get your warehouse to where it can be, not to where it is just based on throwing racking around columns. And we need to get some data in there, and then we can make a lot of these columns almost disappear and act like they're not there by placing them into flue spaces and using a lot of different rack profiles to work around the column spacing that is given to you.
So it sounds like bringing along an engineer to the site selection process is a good idea, and also to be proactive and plan for what your business really requires can really make a big difference. And I think, Austin, that there are not a lot of people that would ever even consider this as a variable when looking at a facility. So this has been very eye-opening. And it's also, I think, neat, the tool that you demonstrated, that you can kind of do what ifs with the different scenarios you're looking at placing within your facility. So at this time, that pretty much concludes our webinar for today. We did want to go over the poll results and see what experiences the audience has been through. So
we had very limited response on our poll results. Only 2 people responded.
And it looks like we had the no answer as the answer of choice on this. Okay, well, we want to thank everybody for their time. Oh, I do see one chat here.
We just got one, yeah.
It looks like the poll shut down really quickly.
Okay, so I was a little too fast in getting the poll out, taking the poll away.
Can you
I
put it
apologize.
back out there, Dave?
Yeah,
and
let me
have
put it
people-
back out there.
Yeah, because I mean, we are just at about the half-hour mark, so it would be definitely interesting. We'll give people a couple minutes here to fill out the poll, and then we'll go over the results.
Yeah, I apologize. My audio cut out there, so I couldn't hear anything for the last little bit.
The poll I took away a little too fast, and so I didn't give people a chance to really get their votes in. So we're going to rerun. We're rerunning the poll and seeing where people are. The one big takeaway out of this that I got, being in several warehouses over time and everything, is, you know, there's so many little things that can make a big difference. And the big difference here is if you choose, if you choose the pole positions incorrectly, if you choose just a little thing like that within a warehouse, it affects you for the rest of your life at that warehouse. So you're not just paying today, but you're paying tomorrow and you're paying the next day. So making the right choice of the building in the first place is very, very important, down to just what, I mean, if you looked at a list of 25 or 30, the top 25 or 30, this may not be on that list even, of things to think about when you're selecting a warehouse. But, you need to go down to, the detail of it and make sure that that warehouse is the one you want. And then if you do get in the situation, it's a matter of what is the best way to mitigate and deal with that, so that I am, like we said, making lemonade out of the lemons.
Yep. Looks like we do have a question here. How do you address commodity class and Nfpa required flue spaces and seismic separation and seismic design Class D areas? Are we looking at this beforehand or making adjustments later on? This is a really good question, because the requirements and regulations are ever changing when it comes to the racking systems within facilities, and especially when we start to get into seismic areas. And what I always say is you want to lean on your racking partners or racking vendors to make sure that you are up to speed with the latest requirements, and that can be the distance of your flue space to ensure that your sprinkler systems are going to adequately be able to get down to each one of the different levels, to the size of your foot plates, of your frames. So that would be my recommendation, is to always consult the experts in those areas, because not only are they ever changing, but they are different in the different areas of the country. But definitely doing your homework up front always pays off, because waiting to learn these things after the steel is on site tends to be a painful surprise. All right, Dave, shall we close the poll and see if we've got some more results?
Yeah, let's do it. All right.
So we have nobody that's searching for a new facility at this time, but we do have people that are experiencing building columns in travel aisles. So that is definitely one of the cardinal sins that we had talked about, that we all, I think, have seen in facilities. Are you losing storage capacity due to building column spacing? 60% yes, 40% no. All right, well, we appreciate everybody's feedback and answering of the poll questions. And if you would like to learn more about this topic, or if you are interested in a storage type analysis to help you ensure you are selecting the right facility going forward, please do not hesitate to reach out to Alpine. Thank you for your time today, and we will be talking to you next month.